in the midst of a lot of things that are happening in our world today, especially in Gloucester, and the Writers' Center, it really does support the Gloucester Stage Company, and we're thrilled to be doing this event again with them. And I just wanted to say that it just shows the power of the true story. The individual true story is just very powerful. And it has the power to reveal, certainly, also to heal, and to open up a place for real conversation about issues. So tonight we're hearing true stories from folks who have been on road trips, and life's a journey, right? So thank you again for being here this evening and sharing your Friday night with us. I have a little story about how Fishtails oftentimes works in the community, and I would like to dedicate this show to Jill Severa. Jill is an employee at Stop and Shop, and when I go into Stop and Shop, I run into her, and she's just so enthusiastic. And she said, "Hey, Maureen, I've got an idea for you." And we always chat for a while, and I take her ideas. She always has great ideas. And tonight is her idea. And so thank you, Jill. I know she's not here with us tonight, but thank you so much for stopping me and talking with me and loving Fishtails. She sees it on Cape Ann TV, so thanks for Cape Ann TV for helping us so much. And without further ado, I would like to invite our first storyteller up here. She is well known in our community. She's a fantastic business person, and she is just a pillar of Gloucester. When I was thinking about having road trip, she was the first person I asked to do this show. She's a great storyteller. Anne Malloy, come on up.
Hello. All right, so I toured with the Grateful Dead for many years, like 3 years, like nonstop. So this is one of the many stories from those years. So it was the summer of '85. I was going to school in Colorado, and we left for the spring break, and we were coming to Gloucester in a 1969 Chevy van with the motor in the middle and dancing skeletons that I had painted down the side of it. So we came back to Gloucester via Dead Tour. And we were with 3 guys, my friend Marcella and myself, and a dog, and a 4-colored silkscreen press that we traveled with that we printed T-shirts, and that's how we made our money to get cross-country. And it was really tight and crowded, and we were broke, and we were all sleeping back there together. And we got to Gloucester. There was a little break-in tour, so we worked for a couple of months here and saved some money. And my friend Marcella and I said, we're going to buy our own vehicle and leave the guys. We'll meet them on tour, but we're going to drive out without them. So I buy this Toyota pickup truck with a cab on the back, and it had the back cut out so that if you were driving and in the front, you could crawl right back into the back of the truck. And it was all shag rug. It was really pimped out ride. It was awesome, and I was 20, and I didn't even know how to drive a standard shift, but by the time we got to New York City, I had it figured out, and we drove through the Blue Ridge Mountain, the Blue Ridge Parkway, and all that, and we were heading to Oklahoma City to meet up with our guy friends in the van, which was named Lumpy. We we're in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I got my feet out the window. I'm painting. My friend Marcel is driving, and all of a sudden my feet get all wet. I'm like, what'd you do? She's like, nothing. So a pipe broke in the car and a hose and got my feet wet. So we pulled over, and I had just started in college. I had read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. So I'm thinking I'm going to fix this with this tin can I had. So I got like one of those old fisherman knives that has the knot thing in it that you can untie the knot. So I'm like banging on the can, and I hit myself right here, and blood goes shooting up like 4 feet. I'm like, all right, forget this idea. Let's push it. So we stop pushing it, and this guy in a pickup truck comes over, and he pulls alongside us. He goes, "You ladies planning on pushing that to the next exit?" And we're like, "Yes, sir." He's like, "Do you know the next exit's 4 miles from here?" I'm like, no, we did not know that. So he's like, would you like a tow? We're like, yes, that would be great. So he takes out this big metal chain out of his truck, and he puts it to the bumper, and he tows us to the truck stop, and he says, it's Labor Day weekend, all right? So he's like, everything's closed, but I got a brother-in-law that can fix it for you. So he's like, I'll come back, with my brother-in-law, and we'll get it all fixed. So we waited at this coffee shop, and we're waiting. He finally shows up. First thing he says to us is, I dropped the old lady off. We're like, oh, no, what's this guy got in mind? So he brought us to this little motel, and he got some beer, and he wants to party, and he's like, we'll go down to the river. We're like, no, go. So we got a weird vibe off him. We sent him on his way. He said he'd be back in the morning. No, he did not come back in the morning. We're like, he's not coming back. So I start walking down the street in Arkansas, and I see this used car dealership. So I go in there, and there's a trailer on there, and there's this guy with this huge fan blowing right on him. He's got a cowboy hat on. He's got his boots up on the desk. So I'm like, told him our whole story. He's like, oh, I got a guy that can help you. So this guy, James Pearson from North Little Rock, shows up, this little old man, and again, big chain, tied it to our bumper, drags us to his house, and his wife put us up, gave us food, to us take showers. It was awesome. And then he's got my whole engine in his front yard, and he's shaking and he's sweating, and I'm like, oh my God. He's gonna pass out and die right here with my engine in his lawn. But sure enough, we woke up in the next morning, he had it all put back together, and we take off. We hit the first stop sign down the street, and it dies again. So I go back, and he's like, you just need to, ride it for a while because, so he jump-started us. He's like, it's a battery. Just drive it. You'll be fine. So we're driving, and the light turns red. I'm like, so there's a McDonald's. So I drive into the McDonald's parking lot, and I start doing laps around the parking lot. Light turns green. I'm like, shh. So we get to Russellville, Arkansas, and it dies again. Another guy with a truck and a chain. They got a lot of chains there. Tied it up, sent us on our way. So we went to this other place. It was closed again. We slept there for the night. I'm going to make this shorter because it's really long. And so we wake up in the morning. The guy's like, I can't help you. So I'm like, all right. So we push it again down the street, and we go to this little mobile mart, little gas station there with a little service station. First they said it was the time and chain, $2,500. I'm like, the last thing I want to do is call my mother and father and ask for money. So it turns out James Pearson in North Little Rock just tightened the head gasket too tight. So he just set this thing in there, and he readjusted it, and it was $25. We were on our way. So we were supposed to meet our friends that were in Lumpy in Oklahoma City, but we had missed that show because of our whole breakdown. So we went up to Kansas City, Missouri, to the Starlight Theater, saw an awesome Dead show, and this is before cell phones, so our friends didn't know where we were. They missed us in Oklahoma. We come pulling into the city in Kansas City and into the parking lot, and there's one of our friends right there. He's like, hey! He's like, come on, we're parked over here, and we had a great show, danced, had a ball. Colorado was the next show, so we're driving through Kansas, and all of a sudden, I'm losing power. So I stop blinking my lights. Our friends in Lumpy pull over. We slept the night there. We ended up having to sell my beautiful Toyota pickup truck and went to the highest bidder. Then we put all our stuff. At this point, there was 5 guys in the van, 2 dogs, 1 pregnant knocked up in Gloucester, and the 4-color press in the coffin, and Marcella and I and all our stuff, They call me a lugaholic because I used to bring a lot of stuff with me on the road. So we pile all that in. We're 3 hours out of Colorado, and Lumpy breaks down. The wires just went. All my friends are like, we're going to get another vehicle, and me and my friend George had tickets for the Red Rock show. So they're like, you guys go. So we start hitchhiking. This car picks us up, and they're like, we only have room for 1 of you. So George is like, you go. I'm like, all right. So I jump in. All I have to my name is some T-shirts. We sold T-shirts. So I had a pillowcase with some T-shirts. I threw one of my own shirts in there, toothbrush, and boom, I got this pillowcase, and off I went. And these people, all of a sudden, we get 30 miles down the road. We're bottoming out, and they're like, you got to get out. And I was like, I was thin then. Like, you got to be kidding me. So here I am walking in the highway in Kansas. I started out on this beautiful ride, and now I'm walking in the middle of Kansas by myself with my pillowcase. So this bus pulls up, and the door opens, and this little hippie chick with like big red hair, John Lennon glasses, big smile, opens the door. She's like, "You need a ride?" Like, yeah, I do. So I get on the bus, and they all introduced me, and they had all the seats out. It was beautiful. It was like panels and beds and a sink and plants hanging and bumper stickers. They all introduced us, and we stopped for gas, and I offered them a little bit of money. We get back on the road. All of a sudden, all these undercover cop cars surround the bus. And this one guy, Baldy, jumps up and goes, "None of the bags on this bus are mine." I'm like, "Oh, they're really going to believe me. Honestly, officer, I was hitchhiking by myself, and they picked me up. I've never met any of these people before in my life, I swear." Like, they're never going to believe me. I'm going to jail for a long time. So anyway, they're like, I thought you paid. So they paid the money, and they let us go. And we ended up at Red Rocks, and I ran into a bunch of my Colorado friends there, and it was really an awesome reunion. And my other friends that sold Lumpy ended up on a little school bus they bought, and we all met up with each other, and it all ended up pretty good, so.
Thanks, Ann. It is a long, strange trip. It is really long, and it's really strange. Our next storyteller is Tom Belf. What a wonderful guy. Tom, come on up here.
So this story begins as a graduate student up at UNH. My brother Todd is in New York City, and he has been working at Esquire magazine for about 6 months. And he calls me up in December, and he says, "My God, you wouldn't believe how much they get for Christmas trees down here in New York City. It's unbelievable." So I'm finishing up my exams in limnology, ecology. I'm making about $1,000 a semester as a graduate student, and I say, "Great, I'm going to make a killing. I'll be down next week." So I contact a friend of mine, his old college roommate, Steve Chinberg, a local. My wife Donna and I grab his truck. We head to the local Boy Scouts of America wholesale distribution facility. I walk in, they say, so what troop are you with? And I say, "Oh, I'm not in with any troop. I just want to buy 20 trees. Get the hell out of here." I go back. I'm devastated already. Donna and Steve are looking at me like the trip hasn't even hasn't even started yet, and it's off to a bad start. Steve says, "Hold on a second." He walks in. Within 5 minutes, kids, their parents, everybody's loading trees, as many trees as we can get into the truck. I said, "What the hell? What'd you say?" He said, "I'm with the Boy Scouts." Wasn't that hard, Tom? So we get down to New York City. It's a Friday night. My brother Todd is going to an Esquire party in Midtown, their holiday party. We get there around 6:30. Unfortunately, it's about 55 degrees. It's wet. It's rainy. It's terrible. But we park our car in Midtown. We take out a couple of trees, and within 10 minutes, we've sold a tree for $75. The trees cost $15 a piece. You know, we are pumped. We are ready to go here. Unfortunately, over the next hour and a half, we didn't sell another single tree. And so, lo and behold, finally, Todd comes out of this party. Another friend emerges out of thin air. He's actually just come off the schooner Ernestina. He's walking the streets of New York, and there he is. And so we'll say, okay, this is a good vibe. We head back up to Todd's, where he's seen how much money can be made selling Christmas trees. Unfortunately, my brother Todd was living at Broadway and 99th. He would go out of his apartment, he would walk a block and a half, get on the subway, see a couple of people selling trees, and then go to work. We get up there, and as many of you probably know, there is somebody selling Christmas trees on every single block, on every single intersection. So here's a bunch of hobos with 20 trees in the back of a New Hampshire plated truck. ready to make their fortunes, and we can't get any space. And people are downright ugly. The store owners want money, big money for us to be in front. The competitors are annoyed at us. They don't want any competition. So we end up driving around the city for hours and hours and hours. But lo and behold, over the course of this time, there's a few beer stops. There's also somehow miraculously friends just start to arrive. And to this day, we have no idea who was there. People we thought were there claim they weren't. People that say they were there, we don't believe. But by the end of it, we have this truck with 19 trees in the back of it, and we have about 10 people lying in the back of a bunch of balsam firs riding around New York City. I mean, it is the manger. It is Starry, Starry Night. At some point, we go all the way down to downtown Manhattan, where there's a staging area for all the wholesalers. We plead with these guys at about 1 a.m, please take our trees. Give us $15. We're done with it. And they'll have nothing to do with it at all. So we head back at 3 a.m. We land back at West 99th. We say, Lord, these trees are in your hands. The neighborhood on West 99th is probably going to have a really great Christmas. We all pass out. Next morning, Donna and I wake up, head on over there about 9 o'clock in the morning, and lo and behold, we're only down to 18 trees. Only one tree has been taken. So this is an omen. Right? So we start selling the trees. We get outside what appears to be a church, and it looks like this is going to be a great place. Suddenly people coming out of there in droves, tens, hundreds of people coming out. Unfortunately, we realize everybody's wearing a yarmulke. This is not where we're going to make the big sales, but lo and behold, everybody's happy. People are laughing. We sell a tree to a woman. We bring it over to her apartment, and we reconnoiter. Okay, what are we going to do? So we head up to 101st Street. It's a little bit of a lesser part of town. There's not so many tree sellers, and we put on our best show. We are singing, we are dancing, we are reciting Christmas carols, and it's a beautiful day, and within half an hour, there's a buzz. People love us. People love our prices because we've slashed our Christmas trees down to $25 a shot. And people love the trees. So within an hour, we're like the hub of this community. We're having a grand old time. People are buying the trees. Within an hour and a half, we only have one last tree remaining. And it's that Charlie Brown tree, right? My brother thinks that he's going to head home with it. I mean, it makes the trees at Ace or Building Center, those really cheap ones, look like the finest tree you could ever buy in Rockport or Gloucester. Suddenly this guy comes by and he says, "Oh my God, I gotta have that tree. It's great. I love it, but I don't have any money." He recites a poem for us. He's so pumped up. And we say, "Okay, you go get money and come on back. We're saving it for you." 15 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes. An hour later, finally, he comes back. He's got the smile of a fifth grader with that Christmas present that he's been waiting for forever. He waves his money. We sell him the tree, and we're done. We've made enough money for one round of beer at the local pub, but more importantly, it has been a glorious, mighty, mighty day in which the simple act of selling Christmas trees allowed us to connect to the 8 million people of New York City. Thanks.
Happy holidays, everybody. The next storyteller is Paige Curtain. Come on up, Paige.
So by the time our lease was up in July, my roommate and I had been looking for a new place for months with no luck, and we were starting to feel cursed. So we did what any rational people would do. We sat on our kitchen floor, clutching a mason jar full of sand and sea salt and crystals and one skeleton key, and begged the universe to please send us a house. Please. anything. And that was when we realized that we were looking at it kind of wrong. No new apartment meant no rent for a little while. And neither of us were under contracts at our jobs. Thank you, retail industry. So what if we just left? Yeah, what if we just went somewhere else? So it probably goes without saying that we were more than a few sheets to the wind at this point. And that kind of thing always sounds really easy when you've been drinking for a few hours. But we had already decided, and I think one of us had already tweeted about it, so we had to go. Hands were tied. Gotta go. So we rented a really cheap 6x6 storage locker and put as much of our life into it as we could. And everything else we sold at yard sales or donated to Savers in exchange for 30% off and a coupon for a free book. It was great. We left on August 12th. And I remember driving straight through Illinois, Missouri, and Kansas to get to Colorado. 14 hours overnight in a Nissan Versa. And we get to our campsite in Hugo, Colorado, miles away from civilization, hours away from cell phone reception, cranky. And the sun was just coming up, and we found ourselves in a field of sunflowers, just stretching all the way back to the mountains. And that was the first time that it felt like maybe we weren't so crazy. This was a good idea. So we wanted to do a figure eight around the country. So from Colorado, we drove southwest all the way to California. And as soon as we saw the ocean, we ran right into it. Oh my gosh, it was beautiful. We kept driving up the west coast to the very corner of Washington. And then Colorado was going to be our hub. So we stopped there one more time on our way home. And we really wanted to see those sunflowers again, but we got to our field and it was October now. So most of the sunflowers had died. But not in a bad way or a rotten way, just in the way that things do. It was like we were being handed the death tarot card. You know, your journey is kind of over. It's time to go home, and that was okay, because sometimes it takes being away and being aimless for a while to make coming home feel like a choice again, and not so much like being stuck there. So, okay, what did I learn on the road? I learned that a national parks pass is a really good deal. And not in small part because it's really easy to accidentally find yourself in a national park that costs $30. I learned that it's actually pretty easy to camp for free across the country as long as you don't mind bugs and not having a toilet. We woke up at 4 a.m. in gale force winds in Golden Gate Park with the tent plastered over us as if we were being vacuum sealed. And I learned how to call the tent company and order new replacement parts. So that was good. But I think mostly we learned that people love their hometowns for such great reasons. And it was the places that our new friends and strangers recommended to us that were the best parts of the trip. You know, little hot springs at the base of mountains in Northern California, or a vegan hot dog place in Portland, Oregon. We came all the way from Salem, Massachusetts, the witch city, to go to a witchcraft museum in the back of a record shop in Cleveland, Ohio. It was great. It was great. But I think the biggest thing, I wish I could say I learned where I wanted to settle down forever, the one place that I connected with, but we connected with everywhere. So I think the number one thing that I learned was to accept the little bits of home that were offered to me in the places that I was visiting. And I think that's something that I'd like to try and offer more to others too.
Thank you, Paige. No place like home. Rick Dubois is our next storyteller. Welcome, Rick.
Testing. Hey, everybody. This is a story back from when I was a kid, kind of from a kid's perspective. When I was recalling recalling it, I was thinking, what do we need to be happy? How much do we need to feel content? When I was a kid, my father took us on road trips everywhere across the country, to California, Yosemite, Yellowstone, up across Canada and into Alaska. The Alcan Highway was a dirt road back then, 1,300 miles long. And he was a construction worker, so his road trips on a shoestring. He had a 1969 Ford Econoline van, the no-frills, basic tin box model. And he had built bunks in it out of plywood, so we could sleep. The bunk above me almost touched my nose. The back doors opened up, so we had this fold-out roadside kitchen with a Coleman stove and a cooler. My mother would make Spam and eggs for breakfast and fried Spam sandwiches for lunch, and she made sweet and sour Spam for dinner, believe it or not. And restaurants, not once, never did we stop at a restaurant. As a kid, I thought the Waffle House was only for the wealthy. I remember going by the Motel 6 and seeing the rich and famous checking in with their colored Samsonite luggage. We had green duffel bags strapped to the roof. I always felt like I wanted to do something to make us more prosperous. I was 6. And so I called this story The Gambler. So we had pitched our tent at a campground in Outer Banks, North Carolina, on the beach, those open campgrounds down there. And my first priority was to find some kids to play with. And there's 8 or 9 of them up in the dunes, so I headed on up there, asked them if I could play with them. Most of them kind of looked back, expressionless, the nameless faces. But this one kid, taller, more sophisticated than the rest of us, he says, "Oh yeah, you can play with this kid, come on. You want to bet?" And I don't know, he had dice with a metal plate that he could roll them on. So 7 or 11, you win. I win. Any other combination, you win. Odds are in your favor. So I thought, okay, that sounds great. He says, okay, we'll bet a quarter. Now, whoa, wait a minute, a quarter. My only measurement of dollars back then was in candy. We had Nelson's candy store at home, had glass cases of penny candy, and some of it was 3 for a penny. So I definitely didn't have a quarter to bet. And again, he was very sophisticated. He said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You can owe me. Besides, odds are you're going to win." So he rolls, gets an 11. I lost. Feigning disappointment, he says, "Oh, I thought for sure you'd win." He had a kid next to him, his sidekick. He's just shrugged. He said, "We'll go double or nothing." What? He said, "That means if you win, you get your quarterback plus another one." He had a shiny quarter to tempt me. Sidekick agreed. He rolled, got an 11 again. I lost. So 15 minutes and several bets later, I was in the hole for like $8. And I was nervous. I was upset. And the kid could see I was getting panicky. And he pointed over to my campground, and he said, "You can win everything back in one bet if you bet your bicycle." Now, I was 6 and under pressure, and there's a big gang up there, so I said, what else could I do? So we bet, and of course, I lost my bike. And I kind of lost my mind there. We had broken through the barrier of betting personal items at the campground, so I went into a kind of betting frenzy. And we bet, and I quickly lost both of my sister's bicycles. Yeah, this is true, too. I lost the Coleman lantern, the tent, the sleeping bags, the folding chairs. We decimated the whole site, except for the Econoline van. So you can imagine what happened next. The kid says, "You can win everything back in one bet, plus the quarter, if you bet the van." So this is real to me. I was under a lot of pressure. I was 6 years old. And so it was really happening. And, my family didn't have much, but I was losing all of it. And the only hope to reclaim it was this kid in this one bet. He rolls. He gets a 5. The next one flips over to a 3 momentarily, then sort of unnaturally clicks over to a 6 on the metal plate. He got an 11. I lost. My panic turned into just gone out of my mind. And this part, I don't know if it's real, but I remember him saying, "Does your family own their own home?" with Sidekick. So I ran down the dune crying, out of my mind towards my family before they could get there, imagining the kid's conversation with my father. I'm sorry, sir, but he lost everything gambling, and we have to take everything. The nameless face kids loading our van with all the stuff, Sidekick as their supervisor. I just ran to my father and blurted it all out. I'm so sorry, I lost everything. They're coming to take everything. And, he's a man of few words. He said, oh, they can't do that. And he went back to his newspaper, reading, sitting on his lawn chair that he no longer owned. My mother, slightly more empathetic than my dad, she said, oh, they tricked you. I said, what? She said, they're underage, plus gambling's illegal. And if they got an 11 every time, they cheated. Those are loaded dice. Those words echoed in my mind. Underage, gambling, cheating, loaded dice. So my panic went into anger, and then I just burst out crying, and I sat in the chair, and that was it. And the next morning when I got up, the kid and his sidekick were up in the dunes. And the kid was throwing food at the seagulls, seagulls all around. Every once in a while going over to sidekick and was holding the bag of food, and he'd get more food and throw it at the seagulls. And one seagull was right above him, and Scout's on it. It was right above him, and it dropped a load. I named her just the other day Seagull Lady Justice. And it dropped a load, and it hit on his head and splattered across his face. You could kind of see him go from disgust to horror, with Sidekick dropping the bag and running in the other direction. He came running down the dunes. He had been marked down the shirt. The rest of the payload came down his shirt. And he's marked running down the dunes. And sitting in the chair watching, I felt kind of bad for him, but not really. I was smiling. And at that moment, I realized that, we didn't have to be Waffle House wealthy. And that I had a newfound appreciation for Spam sandwiches and the Econoline van and road trips without motels. Thanks.
Gosh, I really wonder what my kids have been doing at the beach when we go on family vacations. Cheapers. Our next storyteller is Jim Dowd. Jim is our storyteller in residence as well, and this is his last show as storyteller in residence. Jim, come on down.
Thanks, everyone. I want to just thank Maureen in particular and Henry for making this thing happen. It's been a real honor to have been the storyteller in residence, and I'm super stoked to whom it's being handed off to. You'll be told later. I'm not going to blow the surprise, but you're in good hands, people. So sometime immediately after college, I'm on a bus leaving Mexico City, and what we're doing is my buddies and I have made a sound economic decision to climb a mountain in Mexico called Popo Orizaba, which is 18,000 feet almost high. And this is a sound financial decision because based on our bar tabs at the time and the crash of the peso, this is actually a smart thing to do. And also, I was kind of in that annoying young male bearded phase where life in the 21st century is not challenging enough. We need to be challenged, mountains and nature. And I was reading a lot of Tennyson, and I'm sorry, the only one person in the room actually knew me then, and I want to just throw out an apology to that. But so we're cruising along in this bus to go be challenged. And I remember the bus stops on the outskirts of Mexico City, and there's large dumps there, large piles of trash, with one difference from that one in Danvers we used to have, which is that there's lots of people living on these piles of trash. And there's kids from this dump. They're living in shanty towns of cardboard and garbage bags, and they come swarming the bus to sell us fresca. So I buy frescas. And if I actually believed anything that I actually was reading or saying, then I should have just sold everything and gone to work for these kids. But instead, I just bought some frescoes and said, sorry, kids, I have to go show what being challenged in the 21st century is like. Sorry, gotta go. Sorry, climb the mountain. And we take the bus up to this town, and what you do is we have a guidebook, right? And there's no internet, right? So the guidebook tells you what's going on, but there's been an earthquake, so things are different, and the buildings are gone, and roads are different, so things are quite matching up. And you're supposed to go to this town, and you're supposed to rent hire a van, and the van takes you up to this pass called the Tlamakas Pass, and then you hike for a day because we're going up to 13,000 feet where this hut is, and you hike up there, and you kind of get acclimatized and the whole bit, and then then you start your climbing situation from there. Well, we can't find this van place, and nothing kind of matches up, but there is a dude with a 1972 Chevy Nova. Right? And that whole Mexico didn't have Novas because Nova, I mean, that's bullshit. That's not true. This guy had a Nova, and he was like, I can get you up to Tamakas. We're kind of talking, and we're going, oh, sure, he's going to take us. So we got up the trunk to put our stuff in there, and it's full of Fresca, crates of Fresca. Fresca thinks they're closed out. So we just kind of pile into this this car, and we just go blazing up these roads, which kind of go to the sort of decreasingly excellent situation. And what's amazing is we're ice climbers, and this is the scariest thing that happens, in the whole, we're just kind of going around these corners and up things, and trucks are one-lane roads, and the mariachi music is blaring, and there's no seatbelts, and we're going around these corners, and I'm thinking, okay, just, dude, you're Mr. 21st Century living in, these people aren't going to kill themselves. You just have this higher, and then you look down there's a burned out vehicle down the cliff, and you're like, no, people get killed doing this all the time. Oh God, right? And it takes forever. We're driving through washes and the whole thing, and finally we get there after forever, and we kind of pile out of the van, and I'm clipping on this stuff, and the guidebook is not clear. I'm saying, so where is the Tamakas? And he says, Tamakas trailhead. How do we get up there? And he says, no, Tamakas, right there. The trail to the hut's behind that building? No, he's driven us up to the hut. He's gotten us out. Do we have him drive us back down? What do we do here? Shit, all right, so we put the packs on, and we suspiciously clean and not sweaty, hike into the hut. Hey. And these huts are the same all over the world. Everyone reverts to their worst national stereotype in these huts, right? We're the Americans. We're loud and can't handle our liquor. And there's a team of Germans there, and they're singing songs that are probably about ponies and clouds or whatever. But it sounds like the Poland should be nervous because they're Germans singing, and it's just always terrifying, right? But we're doing our acclimatization hikes from there, and you got to go up to different altitudes and stuff. And at some point, the Japanese show up, and the Japanese have oxygen bottles, so they're wearing oxygen, which is unusual. And we find out that the Japanese are trying to do the mountain in a weekend because the Japanese don't get a lot of time off, and they've got a long weekend, and so they hiked up. They did the hike up. They actually did they didn't go around, but they were going to try to summit the next morning, which was our summit day. And with the oxygen thing, we're like, okay, well, good luck, guys. And so that's cool. Next morning, everyone gets up at 4 a.m. and we climb. The climb is actually not that interesting. It's a glacier. Everyone should check out a glacier before they're gone. They're very cool. But there's a sort of the mountain part and the glacier part. And I remember standing on the summit of this 18,000-foot volcano. We're above the clouds, standing there, and I'm just thinking, this is a triumph of engineering. I'm in a Gore-Tex jacket. I have titanium ice screws, and I'm just looking at, and this guy walked up to me and said, Fresca? And there's a guy, he's this tall. He's a native Mexican, Mexican Indian, and he's wearing huarache sandals, and he's selling Fresca at 18. I bought a Fresca, right? I was in need of refreshment. Yeah, for Fresca, thanks. Kind of put the buzz on my man against nature. Do you come up here all the time? Okay, it's Fresca. So we descend down the other side of the glacier, just kind of this thing, and all the teams are coming and going and doing their whole things, and we're down there. We get to the bottom of where the glacier meets sort of the regular part of the volcano again. We're kind of on this col, and there we run into one of the Mexican guides that we'd kind of been hanging out with, fairly solid dude, and he is with one of the Japanese teams, a woman, and she has the worst case of high-altitude cerebral edema I have ever seen. She can no longer walk. She's staggering. Actually, the way you're supposed to actually tell if someone has this particular syndrome is you ask them questions like, "Who's the president right now?" And we don't ask that question anymore because it just enrages people. But she was no way for us to do that kind of level of consciousness thing. But she was clearly effed up. She's a mess. But he's got to get back to the Japanese team because things are a mess at the Japananize team, and he's got to get back to them. And we have a medic on our team, and we're pretty solid. So he hands her off to us, and he barrels. So we kind of, with our climbing gear, make a backpacky thing, and we're carrying her down the mountain. And now it's dark, right? And we're trying to get her down because the only way to treat this syndrome is descent in altitude. And she's heavy. She's Japanese. She's not huge, but she's big. And we just climbed an 4,000-foot mountain, dude. And so we're coming down. But fortunately, who shows up? But Fresca guy coming down the mountain. He's got a headband, and he's crate of Fresca. He's bringing down the mountain, and son of Fresca guy with the other crate, right? They're like we give Fresca guy $20. I'm like, hey, can you help us get this woman down to a hospital? We need to get her to a hospital. Hospital, he doesn't speak Spanish or English, but we get the word hospital kind of there. So son of Fresca guy drops his crate and starts barreling down the mountain, which is good. He's going to go get the rescue team. Fresca guy grabs the Japanese woman, and he starts going down, and it leaves us standing there with these crates of Fresca. And I got to leave it there. I mean, like this guy's living, and it's littering, so we pick up they're heavy, dude. They're heavy. They're heavier than the Japanese woman. They're actually harder to carry. I just paid a guy $20 to make it harder on myself. We're like staggering on the mountain with this fucking crates of Fresca. Like, oh, this sucks. But eventually, we see down at the hut, like these lights have left the hut, which is good. So a team is coming, the rescue team's coming, and this is good. And so the team's coming, and it's a vehicle. It's a vehicle's coming up. Of course, they have some kind of 4x4 to get the team up as high as they can get from up there that they can then proceed. That makes a lot of sense. No, this vehicle's coming straight up the mountain. It's driving up this alluvial wash that comes off of the glacier. It's like this kind of it's like coming up it's the taxi. It's the Nova. The Nova has come up the mountain. We basically called a cab, is what we had done. And so we the Nova spins around, and we shove her in there, and Tony, the medic, gets in there, and then Fresca guy crams the Fresca crates in there because he's not going to carry that crap anymore. And then he can't fit, so he closes the door, and we go barreling down the mountain, right, to get down. And the plane is and this is now terrifying. I'm like, how did my climbing trip turn into a road trip? We're blazing over, jumping things. This is insane. And we're going to get to the hut, and Tony's going to run in, our medic's going to run in and get more oxygen, and we're going to get out, right? And then they're going to go down to the hut, down to the hospital. So we're blazing down to about 4 a.m., and that's when the teams get up to climb, right? So at 4 a.m., people are getting up to climb, stretching and stuff. And this Nova, out of nowhere, just pulls up, blazing mariachi music, doors open, people jump out. This red-headed English guy, our medic, runs in to get oxygen. We get the Fresca out, and then doors close, takes off, and we're standing there, and all the Germans are staring at us and the people, and my buddy Danny just goes, anybody want a Fresca? Thank you.
Well, we don't have a ceremonial passing of the torch, but we do have the giant fishhook. And Phoebe Potts, come on down.
This is your fishhook. Without it, you are nothing. You will give your fishhook an appropriate name. Oh, sorry. Good. All right, Phoebe. Carry on. Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. I'll hold it for you. I promise not to use it on you.
Okay.
But Phoebe is our new storyteller in residence. Please give her applause.
It's nice. It's really nice. I brought my transitional objects because I was nervous. All right, my road trip story is a love story, and like all great love stories, it begins online. My husband and I were trying to adopt a child, and in our modern age, you submit all your information online, and in this really shamelessly capitalistic way, you get to choose the baby's gender and their color, their race, their creed, the country they're from. There's even a drop-down menu so you can pick which disability you're comfortable with. And and you submit a profile about yourself, and then you get a referral of a baby, God willing. And so you can imagine my profile, married, white, female, Jewish, enjoys traveling, gardening, and complaining, seeks baby to preferably infant, human, still in utero, to love and to cherish and to fill her yawning chasm of unmet needs. And the baby's profile is is much more simple. It's just baby needs at least one living parent. And so Jeff and I receive a referral for a baby boy in Ethiopia. We fly to Ethiopia. And like you guys, I've been raised to be a consumer, and the adoption process definitely treats you as a consumer. So when we get off the plane in Addis Ababa, the first thing I see are all the Ethiopian babies. And I'm kind of like, I'm looking at melons at the Whole Foods, like, oh yeah, no, that was good. Oh, I like that one. That one's good. And then it doesn't occur to me for a good 10 seconds that these babies are attached to Ethiopian adults. And I have this weird thought, which is like, wow, they made their own. Like, that's so cool. Like, this is a whole do-it-yourself thing. And then it takes me 3 more seconds to see them, to see these clutches of white people, the Jeff and Phoebe doppelgangers. So same socioeconomic demographic, same Tiva sandals, same reason for being in Ethiopia. Just they're blonde and blue-eyed and from Dubuque, so not Jewish and minus the stormy outlook. And one of these women looks pointedly at me, but says to her husband, I hope we see Jedediah tomorrow. And it's an invitation to compare notes about the adoption process, which normally would be really valuable, except that I hate her because I hate myself, because I hate adoption, because I hate that we're white people coming from one of the richest nations in the world to one of the poorest African nations to essentially buy a black child. And the reason that we're able to do that is because hundreds of years before, white people from our country came here to either steal or buy black people. And no one has talked to me about this, and yet it's been rising in my gut as a real fear and neuroses, and you can imagine all what else. So I'm like this, and Jeff whisks me into a taxi, and we get to the guest house where we're staying, and we're met by a young Ethiopian woman, a law student, who is mercifully named Mercy. And as soon as she utters just a few sweet syllables of welcome, I spill it. I'm like, what is this like for you to see your most precious resource leaving your country like so many melons? And Jeff has just finished saying hello to her, so he still has that frozen smile. And he's like, please stop talking. And but Mercy mercifully says, would you like to meet your son tomorrow? Yes, I would like to do that. So the next morning, we're bouncing around in this old Toyota van and minivan, and we're leaving this huge city, Addis Ababa, and we're headed into the countryside. And there's acacia trees, and there's flower farms, and there's Chinese auto part factories, and there's a Canadian monkey, and there's like herds and herds and herds of camels up on this ridge. And we're feeling buoyed. We feel hope. We feel like Leo and Kate in a movie where we're okay with our imperialism. And we stop at a lake, and there are women and children who are collecting water, and for some reason they've segregated themselves from this acre of storks. And you should know about me that when I see animals, not human animals, all the rest of them, my instinct is to want to hug them. So I approach the storks, and the storks are about my height, so a little over 5 feet. But I don't think anybody's informed the storks of their height, because I walk toward them and I say the few phrases of Amharic that I know. Salamno, dinanesh, dinanuni, because of course storks would speak Amharic. And they like awkwardly sidestep away from me like 6th graders, kind of like, oh, the giantess is speaking to me, like this. And it's really uncomfortable, so no hug. So we get in the car, back in the van. We drive through the countryside. We end up at this place. We retrieve the baby, which changed our lives forever. Blah 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 blah. We put the baby between us. Put the baby between us, and on the way back, the camels that we had once seen on the ridge are now next to the road. They're just flooding the areas next to the road. And so Eshetu, our driver, and Mercy have stopped the van because they think, these Americans are going to want, to try that hug thing again and get a photo. And what happens next, Jeff and I remember very differently. Jeff remembers that a man comes out from the camels, galloping up on horseback, looks in the window of the van, starts yelling in a language that none of us understand, including Eshetu and Mercy, pulls aside his robe, takes out a revolver, waves it in the air, and we all yell, "Drive!" And Jeff takes the photo. What I remember is that a man walks up right out of the Old Testament, green eyes flashing, looks in the window, sees these two white people, this little black baby between them, and starts yelling at us in a language that nobody in the van understands, except I am picking him up on a very high frequency, and so I know exactly what he says. It sounds like this. Oh, this is just great. Oh, you're going to pluck this child of God from his homeland and take him where? To that gray patch of earth you call New England? Where your idea of culture is talking about your commute? Oh, this is just fantastic. And yeah, while I understand on a granular level that you're going to give him a home and all the pajamas he could ever need, I find it really distasteful to the point of despair of the shameless quality of this adoption that you're doing, of the what is the word I'm looking for? Sorry, it's gone. It's totally gone. He was really mad. He yelled at us like this, and then he says, and if you think one blurry picture of camels is going to connect him to his heritage, then you're worse than those earnest photographers from National Geographic who never tip. And then he pulls aside his robe and takes out a knife and waves it in the air, and we all yell, "Drive!" And Jeff takes the photo. The story that I would tell my baby son is much shorter and no less accurate. And I cribbed it pretty heavily from Molly Bloom in Ulysses, and it goes like this. Your birth mother went to Yahushua and said, "Can you find a family for this baby forever?" Yes. And Yahushua sent us a picture of you and said, "Can you be the parents of this baby forever?" Yes. And we flew on an airplane to Ethiopia, and we met Mercy, and Mercy said, "Would you like to meet your son?" Yes. And Mercy drove us through the countryside, and we came to the gate, and they opened the gate, and we went through the gate, and we came to the door, and they opened the door, and we said, "Is this our son?" Yes. May we pick him up? Yes. And Daddy picked you up, and he cried, and I clapped, and you laughed, and yes, we are, yes, we do, yes.
Well, we can look forward to hearing more from Phoebe over the next year as a storyteller in residence. This is the first time that we've actually had two people tell a story together. And I'm going to invite Farah and Sean Murphy to come down in just a moment. But I just wanted to mention how I met them. Ever been at a party where you don't really know anyone? And you got your drink and you're just sort of hanging out, and suddenly you're next to two people and they're fascinating, and you just basically never want to talk to anybody else that night. You just stay close to these two people. And so Sean and Farah told me this story, and great storytellers, and come on down and tell your story.
So we were thinking about what should we talk and what story we should tell, and we could not come to an agreement for a long time. So then we said, well, maybe we should just tell a story of a very, very crazy journey we had in the Balkans. So my name is Sean Murphy, but I'm actually Serbian, from all things. Nobody would know that, but yes. It was very weird because they write in Cyrillic, and there's no W's over there, so it was very hard to pronounce my name. So here we are. We're in Cambridge. Well, we were in Cambridge or Somerville?
Charlestown.
No, we're in Charlestown. You see? Yeah. And she was not even my girlfriend at the time. And I said, let's go to this party, third date. And I started introducing her to everyone. This is my girlfriend. And
we're coming to your wedding in Serbia.
so lo and behold, he was like, okay, we're going to go to Serbia for a wedding. So we said, okay, she's 3 months, 4 months later. It's 3 months, 4 months later. We go to Serbia, nice wedding, very strange things, lots of gypsies, lots of brass band, really cool. But at the same time, I said, we should go to the coastline. And the coastline is in Croatia and in Montenegro. So the crazy story comes, of course, we rent a car and we're just driving around this crazy country. And we meet up with some friends. And as we're with these friends, we're driving on the coastline. And all of a sudden, a policeman shows up. And he's going like this. And we're like, oh my God, what does this police guy want to do? And he stops us. But he's dead drunk. I mean, he cannot walk. He's look at him and his eyes are all over the place. And we're like, holy shit, what is going to happen over here? So he comes over and my friend who's local in Montenegro, and he says, roll down your window. And I'm like rolling down my window. It's like, and he says, fog lights. And I'm like, fog lights? And the guy says, yes, fog lights. And I'm like, what the F is going on? Why does he want to know about fog lights? And I was like, fog lights? And he says again, fog lights. And he's talking all Serbia, so in actually Montenegrin. And Farah's like looking at it, and she doesn't understand a single word that's going on.
But they are all giggling.
And we're all giggling. And all of a sudden, I said, yeah, I got fog lights. So I turn them on. And he goes in front, barely staggering, and he says, that's a $20 fine. You turned on your fog lights in the daytime. I said, I just turned them on. And he says, yes, they're on. $20. I was like, what the hell? And it's like, I just turned them on. Can we negotiate? And he's like looking at it. How about $5? I was like, $5 it is. And sure enough, he goes and he started waving to the other cops, giving a thumbs up. He got $5, which is probably 10 drinks. So he's like staggering away back to the cafe, which is right next to the place where they kind of stopped us. So they're all drinking and waving. And he says, young man, that was like 10 years ago. Was it 10 years ago?
You were marginally young.
So you could buy a lot of drinks for $5. Not anymore. So we said, okay, so that was kind of, we all giggled. We passed the police blockade, $5. We were like, okay. So a couple of days passed and we're in Dubrovnik. We said, okay, it's time to go back to Belgrade so we can pick up our plane and go home. So here we are, we're like,
But Sean says, do you want to have dinner in Sarajevo? And I said, sure.
and I was like, oh, this is going to be a great idea. We're going to go to Sarajevo, and they have this famous dish in Sarajevo. I remember this from my childhood. So we're like driving in a car, and so the error number one is that I forgot that this is not that long ago after this country went into civil war. So the borders are kind of divided. So you're going to pass through lots of military checkpoints. But sure enough, I was like, this is all cool.
Because Sean Murphy thinks he can talk his way out of anything.
Yes. Or into anything. So we start driving and driving and driving in the first military checkpoint. And they say, oh, yeah, this is good. This is the road that you need to go to Sarajevo. And we're like driving. And it's 9 o'clock at night. And we took a wrong turn. Bad idea.
No, that's not the way it went. The road was closed, and there was a detour.
Yes.
And the detour was an old goat trail.
Yes, this was the old road, probably a Roman road, if anybody known, and only one car can go at the same time, meaning no passing. So we were like driving, and more driving, and we're trying to get out of there. And we look to the right, and you look down, and it's the Grim Reaper. He's just sitting there. And because it's a cliff about a couple 100 yards down. And we're like, wow, this is a goat trail, and we're on this road, and we're going to die. So,
But the worst part is that this is before Bluetooth. So we only had one CD in the car, and it was ABBA's greatest hits.
and Dancing Queen was there to greet us with death. On and on and on. And then there was money, or whatever it was. It just kept on going. And then we saw someone coming in front of us. And we said, holy shit, what are we going to do now? So we're going, and that person is just driving. And then we squeaked really bad, and the mirrors hit and everything else. And we said, oh my God, we're going to die. And then we like barely passed, and we're like, how on earth are we going to get out of this? And then there was a sign. But the sign was, beware of wolves, beware of bears, beware of bandits. And I was like, oh, this is an awesome place. So, and we're like, okay. And we're going, driving, and all of a sudden, a bunch of guys with rifles stop us. And I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? And the guy comes in, and I did the stupidest thing you can ever do, is speak the local language. The best thing over there is just play dumb American. But for some stupid reason, I spoke out, and I spoke in Serbian. And he's like, what? Belgrade played Serbian? Oh, my God, we're going to arrest this guy. And next thing you know, he saw our tickets that were on the dashboard from visiting Dubrovnik. He says, you've been to Dubrovnik? And I said, yeah, we love Dubrovnik. My cousin sells the tickets in Dubrovnik for the castle. This is great. And we're like, okay, let's play up that game. We love Dubrovnik. So we're going through this back and forth. And says, you know what? This is what you got to do. 2 streets down, you got to take a right, because there's another checkpoint, and they're not going to like you. You come from the wrong region. And we, sure enough, we said, okay. But it says, we're not going to Sarajevo. No, you're not going to Sarajevo. It's like, okay, where do you need to go? Foča. I was like, what's Foča? It's a small little village. That's where you want to go. I was like, okay, we're going to go to Foča. So we take the turn, the 2 rights, and we're like driving. I was always trying to hide behind the car. And Farah's like, where are we? So for the next 7 hours, because we're on a goat trail again, and we're going 10 miles an hour, we're looking for Foča. And
Where the F is Foča.
And we're like, where the F is Foča? Where the F? And all of a sudden, at 3 o'clock in the morning, we hit on the top of a mountain, a gas station, and it says, welcome to Foča. Everybody's there. 3 o'clock in the morning, 60, 70 people, all partying. And they're like, what's wrong with this place? They're in Foča. It's like, welcome to Foča. Have some food, have some drinks. I was like, oh, I want to go home, not Foča. So there we are. We're in Foča. It's like, how the hell do we get to Belgrade? I was like, you need to pass through 76 tunnels, and you will get to Belgrade. 76? He says, 76. I was like, oh, okay, 76 tunnels. And sure enough, 76 tunnels later, at 10 miles an hour, we made it, and was like 10 o'clock in the morning. So this is an 18-hour journey or something. I'm exhausted. I'm like, motion sickness, and ABBA is blaring through the whole time. It's just going, and I'm like, and to this day, I do not listen to ABBA. And then we finally got home, and I was like, well, it was not home. It was just at some place. And then we just said, I was like, I'm never listening to ABBA. And I need to sleep because this has been too much. So we survived bandits, bears, and wolves. Survived ABBA.
Fog lights.
Fog lights. So overall, I would tell everyone, go to Bosnia, go to Croatia, do not bring a ABBA CD. Thank you.
Our next storyteller is someone I admire so much and have admired him for a long time. He filled my 20s with the music I still love today, and he just was a part of my life. And thanks, Ty. Come on down and tell a story.
Let's hear it for Maureen. One more time. Maureen, everybody. How are you all? You good? I'm kind of nervous up here. I brought a script because I didn't want to get too far off base. I might wander, you know? So, my story starts out really shitty. I hate to say it, but this is like the worst beginning I could imagine. But it's a great ending. So stick with me. So here we are in the summer of 2017 in Vermont watching local television, and I see a whole bunch of people from Haiti walking across the Canadian border. What's wrong with this picture? Why are people leaving America? Aren't we supposed to be the place they come to? They had earthquakes, famine, and disease, and they came here, and we kicked their asses out. How can that be? The worst thing I can see as an American. I'm shamed watching this local television station. I'm thinking, is this going out to the rest of the country? Is everyone else seeing this? I don't know. I told you the beginning of this story sucked. I thought, when I went to Canada, things were different. It was different times. Circumstances were very different. In 1976, I was 17 years old, and I said to my friend Tony, who had a van, I need my notes now. I said to my friend Tony, let's do something. Let's go someplace. We never seen anything. Let's go to Canada, where they speak French. That's different. It's not like around here. So, we get in his used telephone company van, and we take off. There's a musical angle like the last story. Not ABBA, though. I need some audience participation here, so if you'll do me the... Well, you're built like a car, you got a hubcap, diamond saw halo. You're built like a car, oh yeah, bang a gong. Get it on, get it on. 8 hours of that song. I loved it. 8-track tape? Come on. Used green telephone company van. The only way to travel. So, of course, at that time, the border was a very tough place. We drive up. We're thinking, I'm 17. My friend Tony's like 20. We got drugs. We got something. It was 2 weeks after the Olympics were in Montreal. Here was the grilling the Canadian customs guy gave us. Where are you going? Montreal. How long will you be there for? A couple of days? Thank you. Whoa! I'm thinking cavity searches and taking apart the car and where's the weed, hanging me by my feet, you know. Nothing. They don't care. It's 1976, remember? Nobody cared. So we get up there and we ride the metro. The metro sounds different. The stations are like art museums. The women dress like it's Paris to me. I'm 17. Every woman's beautiful. Come on. I mean, they are. I'm 17. I love women. They won't talk to me. They won't acknowledge me. But I love women. So we head out to the most exotic French-Canadian bistro we can find, A&W Root Beer. Or A&W Root Beer. So stupid. And we get a $1 coupon for the Montreal Alouettes football game, professional football game for $1. What? I didn't even know they had football in Canada. Olympic Stadium, I'm thinking 76,000 people. This is going to be so awesome. But about 10,000 showed up. So it wasn't that exciting. But we did hear that ever exotic national anthem in 2 languages. Wow. And I learned my first Canadian, not French, Canadian. Deux bières froides. 2 cold beers, please. 1 Brador later, I was drunk. Anybody here ever tasted Brador? It's like, yeah. Come on. So, from the football game, we then went to another exotic locale, another cultural touchstone of Montreal and St. Catherine, Toe Blake's Tavern. Anybody remember Toe Blake? Toe Blake was an old hockey player and coach for the Canadiens. And Toe Blake's Tavern had a hockey stick on the front of it. So I knew it was a cool place to drink. Anybody know the difference between a bar and a tavern in those days? Anyone? Tavern was men only. You heard it right. In 1976, that was the law in Quebec province. No women allowed. To me, it was like the Little Rascals, you know? This is the He-Man Women Haters Club. No girls allowed. That meant more passing gas, more drunks sprawled out on the floor, guys burping as loud as they could. I thought, this is the coolest bar I've ever been in. And the average age in that place was about 110. Toe Blake's Tavern. It's a fact. Look it up. Unfortunately, it later closed. Wonder why. So we slept in the used green telephone company van down by the tracks. Of course, luxury accommodations, because we had no money. And then we drove back the next day, having toured Canada completely by then. We get to the border, another grilling, this time by the Americans. Are you American citizens? Yep. Okay. I got a fake ID, buddy, okay? There could be weed in this car. Don't you care? I could care less. So now we're back. No, I'm not going to do it. All I can say is bang a gong, get it on. T-Rex all the way back, another 8 hours, right? So then I'm thinking, my friend Tony must have the money for the Throgs Neck Bridge toll because I don't have any, Canadian or American. He probably keeps a couple of bucks around for emergencies in this thing. No way, he's broke. We're broke. We're driving, we see the sign, Throgs Neck Bridge. I said, Tony, do you have the money for the toll? Nope. I thought you brought some. Oh, come on. Give them Canadian money. They'll take it. They have to take it. I love how people think they know stuff. They have to take it. Like there's a sign. They have to take Canadian money. Not there to take anything. Come on. We had nothing. I said, do you realize if you don't have money for a toll, they won't let you go over the bridge? I believed this at 17. I believed it. I didn't know. So we go up there, and I'm thinking, I'm going to spend the night in jail. The car is going to be impounded. We're done. And the woman goes, just fill out this envelope and send it in. Toll was like 50 cents or something. So pathetic. It's so pathetic. Here's the good part of the story. I don't want to get it right because it's important. The good part of the story is years later, my friend Tony Bellizzi, after seeing the world with me on our road trip to Canada, he created a charity called Hope for the Children. You can find it at hopeforthechildren.org. Tony has traveled around the world many, many times now, and he's fed people. He's built churches and community centers. He's helped youth in about 40 countries. He continues to do amazing work around the world, and I'd love to think that it was that glimpse into the exotic world of outside the American border, just a tiny bit, in 1976, that started it all.
Thanks, Ty. You might know this next storyteller, Jeff Zinn.
Hello, everybody.
I'm Jeff Zinn. I'm the managing director here at Gloucester Stage. And I think my story next year, my road story, will be really good because I'm going on the road like tomorrow. I'm like out of here. I'm just going. I'm going to drive. I'm going to keep going. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I grew up in a very left-wing family. My dad was Howard Zinn. He's sort of an icon. It's part of the story. Part of the story. Thank you. My father thanks you. Anyway, so this is sort of about like how we never went to Disneyland. You might say. And I really just yearn to be a normal kid whose parents might take him to Disneyland someday. You know, like I watched the Mickey Mouse Club on TV, and you know, the whole thing. You know, it was. Anyway, so the first concert that I ever went to was a Pete Seeger, Paul Robeson concert in Peekskill, New York. Which became famous as the Peekskill Riot. Okay? Peekskill Riot. Look it up. I was negative 6 months old when I went to that concert. This was 1949, my mother was pregnant with me, and they went to this Pete Seeger. It was really a Paul Robeson concert. Pete Seeger wasn't even really famous then, but he was on the bill. And as we left the concert, the state troopers channeled us down this dark road, which was lined with local people with pitchforks and stones and bats, and they like stoned the cars as they were going down, as we were trying to leave, and that was the Peekskill Riot. So that was my first concert. Anyway, so we lived in New York, but we went to Atlanta. This is the first big road trip because I think this was in the mid '50s or something. I don't think they'd invented airplanes yet. So we drove, right? I don't know what we drove, but it was lousy, and we drove to Atlanta, and that's where we lived. And then when I was about 7 years old. My dad got a gig in Denver, making some weird movie about the labor movement or something, and so we drove to Denver in the summer in our '54 Chevy or something, no air conditioning, and the way we would do this, they would like fill the gap between the back seat and the front seat with trunks. And so it was just all flat. And me and my sister, who's a couple of years older than me, that was our space. And we would like spend the whole time like, you know, harassing each other and fighting and, you know, and I was prone to car sickness, so I would be throwing up and anyway, so we drove to Denver, and I just looked it up. I think it's 20 hours now. I don't remember stopping at a motel. So maybe they just went continuously, and my dad would sleep, and my mother would drive. But anyway, there was one major stop that we made on the way to Denver, and it's actually right in southern Colorado. And this was a big thing. My dad had written his master's thesis on the Ludlow Massacre. And so we stopped off at the memorial to the Ludlow Massacre in Ludlow, Colorado. And I remember this. I was 7, I think. And flat. There's nothing. It's hot. And then there's this monument to the dead miners and their children. And I'm sure my dad like solemnly recited the details of the Ludlow Massacre to us. I'm 7, okay? And you're gonna learn about the Ludlow Massacre now. I had to. The Ludlow Massacre was an attack by the Colorado National Guard and Colorado Fuel and Iron Company camp guards on a tent colony of 1,200 striking coal miners and their families at Ludlow, Colorado on April 20th, 1914. About 24 people, including miners' wives and children, were killed. The chief owner of the mine, John D. Rockefeller Jr., was widely criticized for the incident. The deaths occurred after a day-long fight between militia and camp guards against striking workers. During the battle, 4 women and 11 children had been hiding in a pit beneath one tent where they were trapped when the tent above them was set on fire. 2 of the women and all of the children suffocated. I was 7. These deaths became a rallying cry for the United Mine Workers of America, who called the incident the Ludlow Massacre. Julia May Courtney reported different numbers in her article, Remember Ludlow, for the magazine Mother Earth. According to her account, the militia fired the 2 largest buildings, the strikers' stores, and going from tent to tent, poured oil on the flimsy structures, setting fire to them. From the blazing tents rushed the women and children, only to be beaten back into the fire by the rain of bullets from the militia. And the Ludlow site, 18 miles northwest of Trinidad and something less south of Denver, is now a ghost town. I was there. I was 7. And I never made it to Disneyland. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Actually, my son did go to Disney World under my duress. Did not want to send him. He's sitting right over there, and he can tell you about that someday. Our last storyteller is Kit Cox. Kit and I did the birth story, the birth fishtails, a couple of months ago, and it was just fantastic. It is on our website, gloucesterwriters.org. All of our fishtails are in our videos there, and they're on Cape Ann TV. But if you'd like to see birth, but Kit, come on up here. Thank you.
So I was an 18-year-old graduate of Cabrillo High School in Palo Alto in 1973 when I decided that I was going to vagabond around Europe with friends for about 6 weeks. I left Palo Alto with that backpack, that guitar, a Guild M20 built in 1962 in Westerly, Rhode Island. No cell phone, no credit card, $600 in my pocket, pair of jeans, pair of cutoffs, couple t-shirts, Sierra Cup. I managed to get across country and eventually to Europe, where I went through England, what's next, France, Holland, anyway, Western Europe, and at each point gradually rendezvousing with half a dozen friends from California. We all wound up at the Pension Diana in Athens, Greece, 3 Kotsika is the address. And from there we went off wandering around Athens, saw the great sights there, and then off to eventually a Greek island called Paros. It was on that island that our 6-week adventure was supposed to expire, and I was supposed to be heading back to go to UC Berkeley. But my curiosity and maybe my stubbornness said, you know what, I'm going to stay. And so through a cloud of dust and diesel, I waved goodbye to my friends. But I also thought of, at that time, the movie Woodstock had been out for a while, and there's a famous scene in that where Crosby, Stills, and Nash said, "And we're scared shitless, man." Well, that was definitely me. I did find out something, though. Traveling alone, you do meet people, perhaps more readily than traveling with others. And before too long, I was headed to Crete, living in a cave in Matala, facing Africa, with a Parisian guy and his New York City girlfriend. This guitar case was actually painted by my Parisian friend. Matala was a very interesting place at that time. It was after it had been featured in Life magazine. But at that time, just like Life magazine, clothing was still frequently optional, and hashish was frequently available. That was the Crete part of the story. I eventually wandered back to the pension in Athens and decided at that point, why not go see Israel? So I went off, got a cheap flight, and landed in Tel Aviv. Another story for another night. Had a bunch of money ripped off. Went to sleep in a park in Tel Aviv, and because I'm ticklish, in the middle of the night, I felt somebody tickling my feet in my sleeping bag while I was sleeping in a park. And I thought, that's kind of odd. Of course, my feet was also where my passport and the last few dollars I had was stashed. And eventually, I kind of sat up and yelled and screamed, and the person disappeared. When I woke up in the morning to put my sleeping bag away in that backpack, I noticed there was a 12-inch knife slit or razor slit in the bottom of my sleeping bag, and what had saved me was being ticklish, for better or for worse. Before moving on from Tel Aviv, I was really limited in funds, but I didn't like the park much, so I moved down to the beach, and I lived in a lifeguard tower for 2 or 3 days and nights. And I fasted, and at the end of those 2 or 3 days and nights, I was just reading my journal. I'd had a loaf of bread, a bunch of grapes, an ice cream cone, and 4 cigarettes. And that's when I headed for Jerusalem. There's more to the stories about Jerusalem. It's a wonderful, wonderful city. If you've never been there, please go see Jerusalem. But anyway, I was wandering through the souk, and some gentleman who looked like he perhaps had been in Lawrence of Arabia said, "Do I know you?" I said, "No." He said, "Would you like to come to my house for dinner?" I said, "Yes." And that night I dined in Bet Sahur, which is not far from Bethlehem in the occupied part of Palestine. And after that, I was hired to work in a hospital, or work on reconstructing a hospital in Jerusalem that was built by the Germans. The boss of the crew was a Christian Arab, and there were Muslim Arabs, there were Jews, and there was one fallen Episcopalian, and you only knew who was who by who had which days off. And that was my the high point of my time in Jerusalem. Outside of discovering I also had dysentery, although I didn't know the word for it, but I was the American running to the head every half an hour, and with my bosses saying, "Shwaya, shwaya, slowly, slowly." I do want to finish off with I did get back to Athens and wound up eventually going to Africa, to Tunisia, and traveled, and while there one night, got invited to dine with a family, with my friends. And we were sitting around a large pot of couscous, trying to dine properly. And all of a sudden they're laughing at us, and I looked around, and finally I said, "Hakeem, why is your family laughing at us?" And Hakeem said, "Because when you chew with your mouths closed, you look like camels." To finish the tale, I eventually found my way home on some strange hippie bus back to Amsterdam, and was hitchhiking back home to California, stopped to see my grandmother in Kentucky, knocked on her door unexpectedly, and she said to my long hair, my scraggly beard, and my scraggly looks, "My God, honey, you look just like Jesus."
Thank you all for coming. It's always a pleasure to see so many people out here. Your presence tonight helps the Gloucester Writers Center in so many ways, and also helps the Gloucester Stage Company. Thank you all for your support, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Fishtails, which will be January 15th as part of the Gloucester Meeting House Foundation's Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And so I hope to see you there. Thanks for coming tonight. Take care.